At the dinner, everyone was happily chatting together. I drank my soup quietly and listened to them talking about topics that I could not relate to. In front of me, their official girlfriend, they expressed their blessings to Linda and James in French and asked about their wedding date. I looked up at James, who had a decent smile on his face. He neither refuted nor clarified these words. In order to integrate into their circle, I quietly learned 4 common languages. But I found that I was the outsider from beginning to end. This group of professors and doctors who had returned from studying abroad had deep contempt in their eyes for me, a junior college graduate. I left my seat and dialed the phone. "Brother, I am willing to accept the blind date at home." After saying goodbye to my brother, I flew back to Beijing overnight. It was 2 o'clock in the morning and James hadn't come back yet. A news push message popped up on the phone, saying that domestic entrepreneur Qiao Changqing had passed away and half of his estate would be donated to charity. News commentaries expressed condolences for the passing of the philanthropic entrepreneur. Thinking back to the last time I saw my father, my eyes filled with tears. When I arrived at the hospital, I was still a step too late. Dad's heart has always been bad, and he is so strong that he kept it a secret from everyone. There was a hint of sadness and self-blame in my brother's eyes. He still felt very sorry that he didn't see you for the last time and didn't see you get married. I buried my head, and the guilt and regret in my heart enveloped me like a tide. "Jessica, I know it's difficult for you, but this is the Qiao family's heritage. Dad said you were the most talented child, but it was a pity that you chose to go to another place. But now you are the only one who can. Jessica, think about it carefully. My father had 2 wishes before he died. One of which was that I could take on the responsibility of supporting the family. The second is to see me start a family. I begged James to accompany me home so that my father could rest in peace. James, just this once, could you please?" But he put on his coat and left in a hurry. "Jessica, there is a time for being unreasonable. Linda is drunk, it's freezing cold, it's not safe for her to be outside alone." He shook my hand away and slammed the door shut. However, Linda clearly has their good brother John by her side. In the evening, I saw John's circle of friends. No matter how many years pass, love will always come to me. This single guy really envy me. At this moment, I could no longer convince myself and completely gave up. I booked a return flight and went home to pack my things. The door opened and James, dressed elegantly in a black coat, walked in. "You're back. Why aren't you asleep yet?" He narrowed his eyes and looked at me. "Pack up the extra stuff and send it back." I made up an excuse and James nodded. "It's late. You should go to bed early. I'll finish cleaning this." There was no interrogation as I had imagined. Today, I was unnaturally quiet. James frowned in an unaccustomed way. A hasty ring broke the silence, and Linda was crying drunkenly on the other end of the phone. "James, can you come and keep me company? I feel like I can't hold on any longer. Just lie down now. I'm always here. Don't be afraid." He patiently coaxed the person on the other end of the phone, his tone gentler than ever before. "Linda is depressed and drunk. You know, depression requires someone to watch over you. Otherwise," I nodded gently, interrupting what he was about to say. "I know." James was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously pulled down his sleeve to cover the wound on his wrist. Yeah, how could I not know? When James suffered from depression, I was the one who helped him get out of the haze little by little. "Didn't you ask me to go home with you last time? I should be free after this work is done." James looked at me, who was not making any noise, and for some reason he felt a little flustered. "Also, I am going to announce your existence to my friends." I nodded. I kept waiting for James' official announcement. But when that day really came, it was when I was ready to leave. There should be an explanation for the unclear situations over the years. Let's just consider this as a period to put an end to these years for us. "Jessica, why are you dressed like this? Is there anything wrong with that?" I looked at him calmly. "No, this dress suits you very well." James was a little dazed. In front of them, I was always wearing black, white, and grey. The simple tones made me look dignified and elegant. James felt that this was generous and decent. Today, I wore a goose yellow cheongsam and my hair was simply tied up with a white jade hairpin. I have always loved bright colors. Maybe it was because he was with Linda last night and only came back this morning. There was a deep apology in James' eyes. "This color looks great on you. I'll buy a few more when I get back." "Yeah," I responded casually. For some reason, James felt as if something had changed. Silence filled the air. Linda and her group were already at the door of the private room, waiting for James with a smile on their faces. It's a rare occasion for us to get together. So naturally we chatted animatedly, from theoretical and cultural skills to the expression of thoughts and feelings, and then to James's heart for Linda. "James has been waiting for you for so many years. You should know that you two were the perfect match in our hearts back then." John looked at James with a teasing smile in his eyes. "You and James are a perfect match. James already has a boyfriend. I'm late after all. It's not too late. We all know that you are always in James' heart. The guy next to Yeru is just a piece of shit, not worthy of being on the table." "John, isn't this a bit too much?" Someone nearby couldn't help but remind him. "That's right. Everyone knows that James loved Linda the most at that time. He even did it for Linda. If Jessica hadn't taken advantage of the situation, they would have been able to reconcile now. James has never forgotten Linda all these years, so Jessica is just a substitute. If you don't believe me, you'll see later whether Jessica is a copy of Linda. She imitates Linda in everything from dressing to hobbies. It's hard to be a good imitator. But when I walked in, everyone held their breath. The girl in front of me has a quiet and bright temperament, which is completely different from the elegant and noble Linda." The atmosphere was a bit awkward. I looked at the stunned crowd and greeted them in a graceful and confident manner. Someone muttered, "That doesn't look like it." Linda saw James and walked up to her with a smile. "James, congratulations. You won the top title again this time. Won't you introduce your work to us?" She subconsciously ignored me and chatted and laughed with James and the group. James smiled and talked about the inspiration for the painting and his experiences over the years. Linda could always continue his conversation. The mountains and flowing water, the harmonious rhythm of the musical instrument and the zither, aren't they a pair of talented men and beautiful women? John at the side suddenly asked in French, "When are you two getting married?" Everyone looked at me and spoke in French tacitly. Linda responded to everyone's blessings in French. I looked at James beside me and he did not deny it. I sighed and left my seat. John looked at me with contempt. How could this junior college student understand French? What James and the others don't know is that in order to get into his heart and integrate into his circle, I have taught myself 4 languages over the years. This kind of basic communication is not difficult for me. Listening to the laughter in the private room, I dialed the phone in my hand. "Brother, I am willing to come back and inherit everything from Dad." "Jessica, I'm glad you think so. Mom and I both hope you can come back. After all, you have been Dad's pride since you were a child. No matter what, we all want you to be happy." The brother on the other end of the phone had a joyful tone in his voice. "Anyway, the sister finally figured it out. However, I need a month to hand over the work here. Is your boyfriend coming back with you?" Noticing that something was wrong with my mood, my brother suddenly asked. When I heard him mention James, a daze flashed across my eyes. "Brother, I'm going to break up with him. I will carry forward my father's career and will not let it sink in our generation." Robert on the other end of the phone sighed. "Jessica, he hasn't been willing to go home with you for so long. Even this time, he didn't want to go with you to see our father for the last time. It's better not to have a man like that. I will give you a good look later. Go home if you feel wronged. You will always be our Chow family's child." "Thank you, brother." I held back the tears in my eyes. "No matter what, my family is my harbor." James looked at my empty seat, and for some reason, he felt a little nervous. What's wrong with Jessica? Since she came back home, she no longer pesters him. Her quietness and understanding somehow annoyed him more than her noise. James was a little irritable and drank 1 glass of wine after another. When I returned to the private room, I saw him drunk. I tried to help him, but James pushed me away. "I don't want to go home." "Linda, why did you leave me?" "Linda, don't go." Everyone touched their noses tacitly and turned their heads away. James looked like an abandoned puppy. With tears in his eyes, everyone felt a little embarrassed and turned their heads away and touched their noses. Linda looked at me with triumph in her eyes. She pretended to be apologetic and embarrassed. "Jessica, I'm sorry. James is like this. I'm afraid." "Then I'll trouble you, Linda. I generously entrusted James to her. Jessica, are you still a woman? John looked at me with anger in his eyes. My casualness towards his brother irritated him somehow. Don't you still have a good brother like me? I looked indifferently at James, who was holding Linda and was unwilling to let go, and turned and left without hesitation. I returned home and packed my things. Everything related to James and me in this family was quickly eliminated by me. After hesitating for a while, I finally opened the door of the studio. Countless copied sketches of backs filled the room. I sighed, sat down in front of the easel, and found the original sketches that were stained with traces of time. This sketch was hastily drawn when James and I first met, when I was leaving. I accidentally dropped it on the ground. Later he picked it up and brought it home, where it became a source of inspiration for him. I put down the final stroke, adding color to the unfinished painting of that year. James didn't come back all night. I didn't call him again, but came to the studio alone. Jessica, are you really leaving us? My colleagues surrounded me reluctantly. I built this design studio bit by bit, and now that it's finally starting to get going, I have to leave. You can all stand on your own now, so don't waste the things I left behind. You stupid girl, you just left without saying anything. How cruel. Although Pay-Cece scolded me, there was a hint of heartache in her eyes. Of course, she knew that her best friend had devoted more than one heart to this relationship. The talented artist James was involved in a plagiarism incident and lost his soul mate. It was me who helped him get out of the haze little by little. James suffered from depression because of this, and I stayed with him all the time, guarding him every step of the way. After work, I ran back and forth just to accompany him for dinner, for fear that he would do something stupid and hurt himself. In order to clear James' suspicion, he investigated the truth bit by bit and contributed money and effort, even paved one road after another for him. In order not to hurt her self-esteem, I used another identity, Bailu, secretly photographed James' paintings, and incorporated the elements in them into the clothing design. This will help James regain his confidence. Did you know, May's latest collection of skirts was launched at the press conference? The most important one is the wedding dress designed by the rising star designer Linda. In the industry, besides Bailu, Linda's designs are the most distinctive. I heard that the pattern on this skirt was painted bit by bit by the talented artist James. How romantic, a love that goes both ways. But didn't they break up a long time ago? James has a girlfriend. Wouldn't it be nice to reconcile? They are a perfect match, a handsome man and a beautiful woman. So what if you have a girlfriend? Love is a game for the brave. What's more, Linda and James met first. Love is an even match, and that junior college girl is not worthy at all. Love is about mutual promotion. That junior college girl will only drag Linda down like a dodder. The sound of girls chattering could be heard as they flipped through fashion magazines with smiles on their faces. Pay-Cece's face turned pale. What kind of bandit logic is this? Don't mind it. I held him back as he tried to argue and shook my head. When Pay-Cece walked out of the cafe, she was still a little angry. I don't want to be involved in this relationship anymore, I sighed and said. But you've done so much for her, and you've already taken 99 steps toward him. Jessica, do you really want to give up? As my best friend, Pay-Cece knows my feelings better than anyone else. I nodded, with a firm look in my eyes. I don't want to wait for her anymore. James won't take this step. Even if I go to him, he will go to someone else. If you go the wrong way, you should change direction in time. If one day, you stand side by side with James, or stand higher than him, and if he regrets his decision and runs towards you again, will you turn back? I shook my head. People don't stand still. After I packed my things, I found an unexpected guest waiting at the door of the apartment. I recognize her. This is James' sister, Fang Qingru. Fang Qingru looked into my eyes with deep disdain. I won't sit in. I came here to tell you that the only daughter-in-law our family recognizes is Linda. Jessica also knows that James is different from you and it's hard for you to resonate with each other in thought. Jessica, if you can't fit in, it's better not to force it. I looked at the aggressive Fang Qingru with a half-smile. Really, but why did Linda insist on leaving him? Was it because she didn't have a soul resonance with James? At the end of the day, Jessica, I hope we can all give each other a little bit of decency. My brother is confused. I hope you can be a wise man and retreat when you encounter difficulties. Okay, I have an academic discussion on ancient cultural etiquette here, so I won't go on any more." After saying that, she turned around and left gracefully. I looked at Fang Qingro's back, a hint of sarcasm flashing across my eyes. When James was suffering from depression, Fang Qingru told me solemnly, "James, this is fragile. Jessica, I feel relieved to leave him to you, but now." Fang Qingru asked me to maintain some dignity. When James came back that night, I noticed that he had changed his clothes. I recognize it. This is the latest couple model launched by May, and the designer is Linda. James noticed my gaze and explained to me, "I vomited all over myself. And this is the only men's clothing Linda has at home. Don't worry, nothing happened to us." Jiajun was there at the time. I smiled. John is the biggest fan of Linda and James. James raised the cake in his hand with a guilty conscience. "Tomorrow is our anniversary. I bought your favorite mango cake." I looked at the melted cake, a little stunned. "Sorry, some of it melted." James was a little annoyed because he forgot to put the cake in the refrigerator when he was delivering medicine to Linda. "It's okay, I can still make a wish." I shook my head. "James, I'm allergic to mangoes. Have you forgotten? Besides, it's already broken. Just throw it away. Go to bed early." James looked at my back and felt inexplicably nervous. He seemed to have made up his mind, and he stepped forward and grabbed my hand. "Jessica, would you like to go home with me tomorrow, meet my family formally?" I wanted to tell James that I wanted to leave. What are these two siblings from the James family up to? Thinking of Fang Qingro's aggressive attitude today, I decided to just talk things out at James' house. This will avoid confusion and misunderstanding among everyone. "Jessica, you seem different lately." James in the car looked at me with some ambiguous meaning in his eyes. I ignored him and looked at the scenery outside the window. The James family is indeed a famous scholarly family in Beijing, filled with the atmosphere of literati and poets. I heard that James was going to bring his girlfriend back today, so Auntie invited me to come and take a look at him. "Jessica won't unwelcome me, will she?" Linda smiled gently, which made Mrs. Fang's eyes smile. "How could that be? We are a family." Fang Qingru looked at me with a meaningful expression. They were a family and I was an outsider. At James's house, Linda was like a star surrounded by others, discussing topics that I could not relate to. He is well versed in both ancient and modern knowledge and can quote from classics. This caused Mr. James to express his admiration again and again. I drank tea quietly, like an invisible person left aside. "Linda, can you take Jessica for a walk in the yard, Mrs.?" James said to Linda, looking at me with contempt in her eyes. It seemed like he wanted to get me out of the way, so I tactfully walked out. "Jessica, let's talk. We all appreciate your dedication to James. But you see, I am the most satisfied daughter-in-law in James' family. James' family is a family of scholars, and they are famous and elegant people in Beijing. They pay attention to the matching of family status. Jessica is a smart person and knows how to use it to her advantage." I looked at her, a hint of sarcasm flashing across my eyes. "A good match? Are you just making the decision for James without asking for his choice? No matter how many times you choose, it will be the same." Jessica still doesn't understand these days. Linda looked at me and smiled meaningfully. "I can also help you study abroad, become a celebrity, and integrate you into this circle. Then Jessica can also find a good match in this circle." Linda looked at me with a look of superior pity in her eyes and said, "I don't need it, Jessica, why bother? Then I can only change the way I deal with you to make you give up completely." There was a hint of smile in Linda's eyes. I ignored him and turned away. The family dinner at James's house ended in a bad mood. On the way back, James looked a little tired. I was just about to explain the breakup to him clearly, but was interrupted by a hurried phone call from Fang Qingru. "James, come back soon. Linda is in a very bad condition now." At the same time, Linda sent James a photo. She was sitting on the roof of a skyscraper wearing the wedding dress she designed. The wind blew her skirt and her expression was sad. "James, I will marry you again in the next life." I saw James' back as he turned around and ran towards the skyscraper without hesitation, tears falling with the wind. I turned around and walked in the opposite direction. Back in the house, I packed my things. A new piece of news was pushed out on Weibo about the extraordinary love story between a talented painter and a rising star in the fashion industry. In the footage, Linda and James embrace each other affectionately. The marketing account keeps pushing the message. I think it's Fang Qingrou's work. I sighed and changed the departure time to 10 o'clock the next night. Nearing the early hours of the morning, James finally stumbled back home. The smell of alcohol made me feel uncomfortable. I wet the towel and gently wiped his face. James grabbed my hand and put his arm around my waist. Jessica, Linda has depression. I'm just trying to calm her down. Don't think too much about it. Yeah, I know everything. When James was suffering from severe depression due to plagiarism, I was the one who helped him get out of the haze little by little. That time he slit his wrists in the bathroom, I rushed to his apartment in the heavy rain. He broke the door open, his hands covered in blood, and gritted his teeth as he carried him to the hospital. I couldn't help but feel a little dazed and wanted to push him away, but he held me tighter. I don't know when, a ring appeared on my hand. Jessica, this is an anniversary gift. I looked at the inappropriate ring and a bitter smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. The ring is a bit too big for my size. Compared to the high-profile romantic declarations of love on the skyscrapers, the love he expressed to me was just drunken gibberish. Jessica, after I finish this competition, let's get engaged. Okay, it's almost the end of the year. Let's have a reunion dinner together. Didn't you say that Uncle wanted to see me? What gift do you think Uncle would like? Jessica, why are you crying? James was a little panicked, as he seemed to have never seen me cry before. I was at a loss for what to do for a moment. I mentioned many times that I wanted to take him home, but James always said he was busy and refused to go home with me. We will never be able to have this reunion dinner again. I wiped away my tears and quickly calmed myself down. James noticed my trembling, thinking that the hard work had paid off, and cried for joy. He patted my back gently and comforted me. Be good, don't cry. When Linda questioned him today, the person who flashed through her mind was Jessica. When Linda's condition is completely stable, he will marry Jessica. It's too late. Go to bed early. I turned around and prepared to go back to the room. Jessica, let's celebrate our anniversary tomorrow. This time we'll stay at home and not go anywhere. James was a little flustered and grabbed my hand. I nodded and decided to talk it out completely tomorrow. The next day, I cooked a table full of dishes, but when I opened James' room, I found it empty. Jessica, I'll go to the hospital with Linda for a follow-up checkup. I'll be back to have dinner with you in the evening. I waited quietly at the dining table, and the food on the table was reheated again and again. Until 8 o'clock in the evening, James still didn't come back. A wry smile formed on my lips. I had to go. In the last few minutes of waiting at the airport, I tried to call James, but the phone was turned off. Fang Qingrou opened WeChat on her phone and updated her moments. Above are Linda, James, and Jiang's parents, happily eating the reunion dinner together. The caption reads, "A new member of our family." I clicked like, then found James's WeChat profile picture, edited the text and sent it. Let's finish it. I wish you and Linda happiness. I've placed your ring on the table, James. I won't wait for you this time. After saying that, I blocked James and threw my phone into the trash can at the airport. As soon as I got off the plane, I saw my brother waiting at the airport gate. Have you dealt with your business? Robert looked at me and asked softly. I nodded. Jessica, whatever, welcome home. My brother and I returned home together. When my mother saw me, tears welled up in her eyes. It's good to be back. At the same time, James frowned. He finally managed to talk things out with Linda, took her to the Lin family, and calmed her down. It was already late outside, so he told Fang Qingrou to take good care of her, then turned around and left in a hurry. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind. Jessica was still waiting for her at home. He wanted to take out his cell phone to call Jessica, but found that it was turned off. James couldn't help but feel uneasy in his heart. He always felt that he had lost something very important. Jessica will definitely wait for her. She will. Every time he came home late, she would sit quietly on the sofa and wait for him to come back before resting peacefully. James hurriedly comforted himself. but when he walked into the house, he saw only cold food. He rushed into Jessica's room, only to find it empty. James quickly charged his phone and saw the message from Jessica. "Where are you? I sent a message." But only received a red exclamation mark. Jessica had already blocked him, and James finally panicked. He hurriedly dialed Jessica's cell phone number, but found that it was turned off anyway. He finally understood where the uneasiness of the past few days came from. Jessica is becoming more and more sensible, simply because she no longer cares. Everything has changed since she came back. What on earth happened? They were obviously going to get married soon. Jessica has done so much for him. How could she give up on him and abandon him? No, they will get married as soon as the competition is over. Jessica, he will definitely wait for me. However, I had no time to take care of James because I was overwhelmed by the piles of things at home. Robert was in charge of the family business, and after his father passed away, he was overwhelmed. "Jessica, you don't have to work so hard." Robert looked at his sister with a bit of heartache in his eyes. "Brother, please arrange a meeting between me and Mr. Pei tomorrow." This won't work. There were many fashion magazines in the cafe, and Pei Qingji picked up one at random. It is the latest issue of fashion magazine. "Jessica, it's a big project to combine tradition and modernity." Pei Qingji casually opened the magazine with his slender fingers, and the first article was a report on the entry of the talented painter James. His latest painting is a portrait. It is the back of a woman, the goose yellow cheongsam outlining her graceful figure. The other work shows the back of a young boy. It bears the marks of time and is controversial. It just so happened that the TV broadcast the live broadcast of the award ceremony. "Linda, is that you in the back of this painting? It looks like James' latest painting. I declare these two paintings to be national love photos. Did you draw the other one?" Linda on the side admitted it with a smile. "I looked at James in the camera, and he didn't deny it. Substitution is the most shameful thing in the painting world, but James did the most shameful thing for Linda." A wry smile formed at the corner of my mouth. "I really like these designs by Jessica, but Jessica's decision to leave the church midway through life is risky. I think, however, risks and opportunities coexist. I trust you. Happy cooperation. My family has always been in a mediocre position in the fashion brand circle, and my father has paid a lot for this. At first, I cooperated with Pei Cece under the name of Bailu, and planned to return to the family after marrying James. I have not forgotten my father's wish. For James, I gave up the design department and came to his city to study business. Just as I was about to leave, a big surprise appeared on the TV screen in the coffee shop. This time, the winning painting is not James's work, but another work. The work is signed by Bailu. Pei Cece waved her hands while receiving the award. "Jessica, I know you are watching. How are you? Are you happy?" Pei Cece in front of him lowered her head and looked at Pei Qingji for help. "Brother, save me." She opened her mouth eager to try. Pei Qingji turned his head away and ignored her message. "Go ahead." I looked at her calmly. "Jessica, I just don't want everything you've done to be buried. So I used the things you left behind to sign you up for this competition. Linda wants to claim your honor." There was a hint of anger in Pei Cece's eyes. "The whole internet is going crazy now. Bailu and Linda's fake work are so similar that she is being doxxed now. It doesn't matter if we trace the source, you know. All of Linda's dark history has been uncovered. Linda was the one who plagiarized James back then. She sold James's paintings to pay for her study abroad. Now that she's famous, the real estate agent who helped her resell her paintings wants to extort money. I guess the two sides didn't reach an agreement. Don't be angry. I heard that you need cooperation. I asked my brother to come with sincerity this time. We can't give up our studio. Besides, your talent is not as good as yours when compared to those two people combined. I know Pei Cece is not happy with what I have experienced over the years." A warm feeling spread in my heart. "You damn girl. The auction in Beijing in 3 days will require the champion to paint a piece of work, and part of the proceeds will be used as a charity auction fund. What are you going to draw?" I smiled and looked at the two Chinese costume love portraits. "That's it. At the auction, I saw James, but Linda was no longer by his side." "Jessica, so, you are teacher Bailu. I have kept that sketch. I've been looking for you." The sketch I dropped was picked up by him. It became his source of inspiration, thinking of that stunning glimpse I had once. The person before me is no longer the young boy he once was. The French organizer who was walking towards me came over to say hello, and I smiled and responded politely, Jessica. There was a hint of surprise in James' eyes. And then he remembered something. Sorry, let's go. Pei Qingji came over with a smile to help out, and looked at James with raised eyebrows. Jessica, who is he? Pei Qingji just stretched out his hand to me and didn't answer him. I took his arm. James, you should pay more attention to your fiancé. The items at the auction are not only paintings, but also many antiques and toys. For some reason, every time I liked something, James would bid against me. No more bidding. Pei Qingji on the side looked at me with amusement in his eyes. We still have to consider the cost. That's not how you spend your money. Pei Qingji smiled and then raised his bidding card. James, who was standing by, had a hint of anger in his eyes. The Song Dynasty Ru Kill vase was lifted 10 times higher. In the end, he was captured by Pei Qingji. I think Mr. Pei will buy it to make a nice vase, right? James looked at Pei Qingji with sarcasm in his eyes. Mr. Pei may not fully appreciate its aesthetic value. Isn't it a pity to let it gather dust? Value, isn't its value given by people? The most direct way to demonstrate value is money. I can buy it for 100, 1,000, or 10,000 times the price of James. It is a treasure in my eyes. Pei Qingji looked at him and said meaningfully, just like if Bailu hadn't used fashion to interpret your paintings, you would probably still be an unknown painter. You are simply tarnishing art. Pei Qingji ignored him, and the next item to be auctioned was my work. James couldn't help but hold his breath. The painting in front of him was still a back view, however, the person above is no longer him. A smile flashed across Pei Qingji's eyes, and a gesture made the whole audience silent. James clenched the bidding card in his hand. He didn't even have a chance to bid. Pei Qingji's gesture means lighting a sky lantern. No matter how much the price is, he will add it. James' face turned pale, and there was a hint of unwillingness in his eyes. He simply had no capital to compete with Pei Qingji. Even if you sell the entire James family, it won't be even a drop in the bucket of the Pei family. After the auction, Pei Qingji and I prepared to return to the studio together. The pattern on this vase is very suitable for the theme of the new issue of clothing. Both Pei's jewelry and your company's clothing can use this concept. Well, you do what you want. Thank you for the expense, Mr. Pei. I looked at him with a smile. I like the painting you drew for me. Pei Qingji whispered quietly in my ear. When I was going home, I saw a familiar figure at the door. Jessica. James looked at me with a hint of tenderness in his eyes. What are you doing here? I looked at him with cold eyes. I said we'll get married after this competition. There was determination in James' eyes. Don't you want Linda anymore? I've said it before. Linda and I are just friends. She's just a patient. I've always treated her as a sister, James. I plan to inherit the family business in the future. We are not on the same path. Linda is a qualified daughter-in-law in your circle, so don't come to me anymore. Jessica, don't you want me anymore? James suddenly hugged me from behind and put his arms around my waist. I pulled away calmly. James, please stop pulling. I'm engaged to someone else now. You're lying. There's no way you'll wait for me. Jessica, I heard my brother calling me. And he looked at James next to him with a hint of hostility. This is James. Right, I heard about you from Jessica. If you don't mind, come sit in the room. James heard this and a hint of joy flashed across his eyes. I sighed and didn't stop. I told my brother about my experiences over the years. But he is a vindictive person. I know exactly what he means. When James saw Pei Qingji in the room, his face turned pale. I don't know what Pei Qingji and my mother talked about. But the old lady was smiling so hard that her eyebrows were curved. Hello, Auntie, I'm James. My mother looked at her kindly and motioned for him to sit down. Auntie, I'm here this time. However, my mother interrupted him. Jessica, the Pei family and our family have always had a child marriage. Now that you're home and know Mr. Pei, I don't have to arrange a blind date for you too. Auntie, don't you ask Jessica's wishes. James looked at me with persistence in his eyes. Pei Qingji looked at me when he heard this. Of course I do. James didn't know how he walked out of the Liu family. Pei Qingji looked at me with a hint of hesitation in his eyes. I know you said that in anger. He looked at James's departing back, and for some reason his sympathetic heart became a little stiff. He sent people to investigate James. But the fact was that everything James did was chilling. I looked at him and shook my head. I didn't say that in anger. Otherwise I wouldn't have painted that picture. James is right. Marriage is decided by parents and matchmakers. We are a perfect match. I placed a ring in his hand and put it on him with a smile. My family started out as a clothing designer, and measuring sizes with your eyes is a basic skill. He shook my hand away and slammed the door shut. This ring is a perfect match with mine. The two rings are neither too big nor too small, just the right size for a pair. This girl Pei Cece. A hint of surprise flashed in Pei Qingji's eyes. We looked at each other and smiled. James reported Linda for plagiarism, not just the false claim of Jessica's painting. It turns out that all her designs were copied from others. Her startup capital came from the copyrights sold from her stolen sketches. She left the country after hurting herself. If he hadn't investigated abroad, he wouldn't have known that Linda's talent came from her deception. Even her design drawings were sketches by another man. Thinking of the pain of being accused of plagiarism, he actually favored such a person. Linda was exposed and fell into disgrace. Hiding in the dark, the man in front of her destroyed everything for her. She watched for the right moment and stabbed the knife hidden in her hand into the man's palm again and again. Linda was arrested by the police and James was sent to the hospital. The tendons and veins in his hands were pierced and he could no longer pick up a paintbrush. It is not difficult to raise a son. But James closed himself off again. He always liked to stay in the yard and look at the yellowed painting. Above is her back. Fang Qingru looked at her brother at the side with regret in her eyes. They were wrong and made their brother miss out on happiness. But it was too late now. The news reported the wedding of Pei's family and Jessica's family. Pei Qingji and Jessica are a perfect match, complementing each other. Some things, once missed, will never be possible again. James looked into the distance. The sun outside had already set, and his sun also set. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.